Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's been a while since I last uploaded, but if you're new to the channel, you're in for a treat because I'm coming to you guys today with a brand new lower body session focused on really improving mobility and on some things that we don't usually focus on if we're looking at the hypertrophy and strength aspect of things and not just our general overall well-being, which is something that I'm beginning to realize is more and more important as we're dealing with nagging pains and injuries. So here on this session, you saw me start off with an all four reach, and I was just holding that position for, I would say, 30 seconds. And this really allows you to open up that rib cage area and get some expansion where you need it. And then I moved on to an 8-point plank here, and this allowed me to really engage my core. So what I'm finding with these drills that I'm doing beforehand is that they allow me to sort of prime the muscles that I need to utilize on that day, just so that I'm not getting any aches where I shouldn't be having them, like in my lower back or anything else, because those obliques are really important to stabilize ourselves as we lift. Here you guys see me doing a step down. This variation is really good to improve mobility in your pelvis. So right here, I'm internally rotating my femur. I'm really driving that knee up. I'm not allowing my knee to come out. There's very minimal external rotation. And so you just need to lightly load this and just do a step down variation. I usually reach the bottom and then I pause there for 4 to 5 seconds. I get a lot of breath work. And this is actually something that I wouldn't typically do. But you guys might be familiar with a channel by Jonathan Warren, and he's really put me on to a lot of this stuff, and sort of I've been training under him as of the last few weeks too, and he's had me doing a lot of the stuff that I would typically just skip, to be frank with you. But it's actually opening up a lot of options for my training. Here we have a kickstand RDL, and like I said, it's movements like these, like I'm starting off with a very light weight, I'm just doing a bunch of reps. But I think we overlook these movements and we just look at like a standard Romanian deadlift or a deadlift on the floor as like the king of all hinges. And I think that couldn't be further from the truth. What you're doing here is not only are you able to like focus more on the musculature, the hamstring and the glutes, but because you're doing it in a unilateral fashion, you're taxing the lower back less. And so oftentimes if you don't have that mobility, and you run out of space when you start to retract your hips and you bring them back, what you do is you end up compensating on hinge points in your spine. So by doing a movement like this, I think this is literally like an optimal exercise as a hip hinge. For 99% of people, I can't see anybody who wouldn't benefit from an exercise like this. And not only that, but if you think about the bilateral types of hinges, deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, snatch grip deadlifts, all these over time, they start to really induce wear and tear on your body. But an exercise like this is really good for longevity as well, just because you're putting less strain on your spine as a whole, and just focusing on really improving power where you need it, power and strength. Then I went and just did some calf raises on these leg presses, and I did something that you should never do, which is I did like a really quick one warm up set, and then I hopped into these, and guess what? When I was asleep, I actually woke up with a cramp in my calf that night, and it's a very typical thing with me. This happens to me all the time, where for some reason I warm up for everything else, but then calves, I'm like, oh screw it, I'm just gonna hop into my working weight, and yeah, that always comes back to bite me. But my calves are coming up. I think they're improving steadily but slowly. I've been upping the volume, and somewhere around 3 to 4 times in a week, and they're looking pretty good. After that, I went ahead and did just that kickstand with a slightly heavier weight. Again, I'm not really focused on the weight here. I'm just focused on the technique, keeping my posture as like my torso as vertical as possible, not allowing any bend, keeping my head in line with my body as well. Like a lot of people, their heads sway on hinges, like they're either looking straight at the ground, or actually more common too is like extension, like they got their head and they're looking up to the ceiling. But I feel like my form here is pretty crispy clean. I'm grabbing on lower end of the rack. I really like having some sort of rack support. I don't know if you've ever tried a unilateral hinge like with like a landmine or something like that. It's a lot more difficult, because you don't have that balance, and that doesn't make it a bad movement. It's just if you would like to get a little more bang out of your buck, I think the rack support is really crucial. It also depends on your goals too. Like, balance isn't on the top of my list right now, but like something like this where I can just focus on the muscle, focus on getting some oblique involvement actually, which is something that I lack overall in my compound movements. And Jonathan, the guy who's training me, if you haven't checked out his channel, like I said, check it out. But he's also really honed in on that aspect of my training, because it became clear to me after all these years of lifting that I wasn't really engaging my core the way that I should be. And some of the nagging, not really huge injuries, but just like things with my scapula and overall, and some of those issues have been a result of just me not really getting that core that connects everything together from our neck to our pelvis, like in line. And it's something that we overlook. A lot of people in the gym, they're doing some real weird things with their breathing. You got people who they hold their breath all the time. You got people taking belly breaths. And, at the end of the day, what you're sacrificing by improperly breathing and not just bracing, getting a nice firm midsection and breathing through the rib cage, what you end up sacrificing is stability. And lack of stability in your lifts is just a recipe for disaster as you train. And so, doing, like I said, the warm-ups, the drills earlier, and then these kickstand RDLs, like, a younger version of myself. And I imagine, like, if any of you guys are really into pushing the heavy lows or looking at this and you're like, man, I don't want to do that. That doesn't look fun, because, we like to lift heavy weights. I've been the guy, like, doing RDLs with, over 4 plates and all this other stuff, and the farmer's carries for almost up to 5 plates. And, but at the end of the day, like you sort of take a step back. I say that as I do these reverse lunges. You take a step back and you see, like, what is the point of all this? Like, why are we in the gym? And then I think once you ask yourself that question, you start to see, like, oh, we're not just in the gym, to build muscle, right? We're really after, like, health and longevity. And it may sound like a broken record because it's not like that popular of an opinion. Most people would say they're just going in there, to get stronger. And I think that's a part of the equation. I think getting stronger means you're getting healthier. But there's so much more that goes into it, like, how good can you move? Are you in pain? These are questions that I think you're just your average person really pushing on the weights. They especially when you get deep into the rabbit hole of training, 5, 6, some people even 7 days a week. They're not asking themselves that question. And the earlier you get on the path of really, like, longevity, focusing on mobility, doing the unilateral movements that you see me doing here, like these reverse lunges, as opposed to something that's a lot more compressive, like a bilateral squat, the better you're going to set yourself up for 10 years down the line. And trust me, like I said, I've been the person doing the heavy box squats and everything like that, but you're really going to sacrifice something there. And so it doesn't mean you can't do those movements, and it doesn't mean that you just have to do lunges or anything like that, but it just means that if you really want to prioritize longevity and health in your training, there's going to be a sacrifice for that. And I think it's a sacrifice for the better. And then here you have me, finishing off with some leg press. And, I think this is a really smart way to train, which is you put the exercises that are going to require the highest skill, right? Anything that's unilateral, anything that requires you to have, like, a vertical torso throughout, that you have to think a lot about and make sure your form is pristine, especially hinges. You put that at the beginning of the session, and then you come in here with the machine, and it really allows you to push and, like, exude your full effort without really having to worry about your body, where you are in space. And there's still some technique that goes into this. Like here, I'm really focused on keeping my knees in. I don't have a super wide stance. I don't have my feet all the way up on the leg press. I don't have any tilting my lower back. I'm just very much in that internally rotated position that you saw me prime through the activation drills at the beginning of this session, because a lot of people have a tendency to let their knees go out, or to even let their knees concave in. And right here, I'm just in the perfect position, just focused on eking out the most out of these reps, because at the end of the day, something that you realize as well, and this goes hand in hand with the longevity idea that I'm promoting here, is that you can take almost any rep scheme to failure. So for now, like something that I'll do is I'll just pick a weight and I say I'm going to do 10 reps, and I'm going to try to make those 10 reps as hard as possible to where I fail within those 10 reps. So maybe it's a weight that I can do 15 to 20 reps with, but I want to challenge myself and see like, hey, is it possible for me to take this exercise and actually fail at 10? And like, you know, the younger version of myself, and maybe a lot of you guys watching this are thinking like, why would I want to do that? I want to progressively overload. I want to keep adding weight, but there's something more to progressive overload than just adding weight and reps. And that, I think that crucial factor is like form, technique, and time under tension. And I think that's an overlooked part of bodybuilding, you know, especially in our modern era where, you know, time under tension is overlooked. But if you looked at my form throughout, you know, basically all these videos, everything's really done in a slow cadence. Everything's done slow and controlled. There's nothing really powerful and explosive, which you can have as this different aspect of your training, and that's really warranted actually. But like if we're just talking about health and hypertrophy and things of that nature, then this is really the cadence where the vast majority of your training is going to be in. And then so you saw me with those reverse crunches, like taking those nice, slow and control. Those reverse crunches, by the way, are excellent for just like keeping that lower back in a very healthy and not extended position. So there's a little bit of flexion there, and it's just a really good way to just move your spine in different ways throughout your training. It's probably the best ab movement that you could do in terms of just overall health, as opposed to ones where you're crunching down and you're really putting your upper back into kyphosis. And then here's just some leg extensions. You know, you can really just push them at the end of the session, and as long as you keep your feet upright, and then keep your hips on the pad, like your pelvis. And I do the exact same thing here, just really focusing on counter force, focusing on keeping my thighs on the pad. People, they'll shoot their butt up, they'll get that bend in the lower back, you know, they'll do all sorts of weird stuff. And yeah, you know, it's weird with my calves, honestly. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Like I can see the striations, right? But there's just, the mass just isn't there. But like I said, this is still an improvement from where I was like 3 months ago with these suckers. Like I can still see like, okay, I put on a little bit there, but we're gonna have to work on those. Like I said, you know, I'm taking sort of not a hiatus, but you know, building muscle isn't the prime focus right now. The real prime focus is just getting my body right, improving my mobility, and getting stronger in those positions, which is the hypertrophy aspect, right? Like if you can get stronger in deeper positions, you're going to set yourself up better for building muscle. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, hit that like button, and as always, I plan on coming to you guys with more content. I know I'm not always the best with that, but I really just want to give back and teach people, you know, what I know about lifting. So like I said, I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.